There is a ham hanging in my cellar right now, and it has been hanging there since the cold days of last winter. It is summer now, hot enough outside that the air shimmers over the field. And that ham, which came off a hog we butchered when there was snow on the ground, has hung through the whole turning of the year. No fridge, no freezer, no electric, no ice. I could take it down this afternoon, slice into it, and feed my family a supper richer and sweeter than anything you will buy wrapped in plastic at the store. It will not have spoiled. It will not make anyone sick. It has only gotten better with the waiting. A whole year, just salt and smoke and patience, and the knowledge of how to do it. My name is Eli Yoder. I am Amish. I keep a farm with no power line running to it. My family raises and butchers its own meat. Not once in my whole life have I owned a refrigerator or a freezer. And I want you to sit with that for a moment, because I know that for most folks watching, the thought of living a single week without a fridge feels like the beginning of a disaster. You picture spoiled milk and rotten meat and your family getting sick. You have been taught that cold is the only thing standing between you and ruin. And by the time we are done here, you are going to understand this is not quite true, and it never was. I am going to walk you through every way my people keep meat sound and good for a year and more without a lick of electricity, and I am going to show you the one thing about spoiling meat that, once you understand it, changes the way you see your whole kitchen. Stay with me, because this is the part nobody ever explained to you. Let me ask you something. Why does meat go bad? Most folks, if you ask them, will say, because it got warm, because it was left out, and so they believe the answer is simply cold, more cold, always cold, and the colder, the better. And so the whole modern kitchen is built around fighting warmth. The fridge, the freezer, the cooler, the ice, the deep freeze in the garage. A family today will lay in a freezer full of meat for the winter and feel safe. The power goes out for 3 days and they stand there and watch hundreds of dollars of food turn to slime. Helpless, because the one weapon they had was taken from them. Here is the truth my grandfather taught me, sitting at the butchering table when I was a boy. And it is the thing I want you to carry out of this video, even if you forget all the rest. Meat does not spoil because it is warm. Meat spoils because of what is living in it and on it. There are tiny living things, bacteria, too small for your eye, and they are what rot the meat. And those bacteria need 4 things to grow. They need water, they need warmth, they need air, and they need time. That is all. Take away any one of those 4, and the bacteria slow down. Take away 2 or 3 of them, and they all but stop, and your meat keeps. Now look again at what a fridge does. A fridge fights exactly one of those 4 things. It fights the warmth. That is all it does. It makes the meat cold, which slows the bacteria, which buys you a little time, a few days, a week. It does nothing about the water in the meat, nothing about the air around it. It only chills it. And that is why your store meat lasts you days, not years. The fridge is the weakest of all the tools because it only fights one enemy out of 4, and the moment the power dies, it fights nothing at all. The old ways are stronger because they go after the other 3. Salt and smoke and drying pull the water out, and bacteria cannot live without water. Lard and canning shut out the air, and many bacteria cannot live without air. Vinegar turns the meat sour, which bacteria cannot abide. We do not bother fighting the warmth at all, most of the time, because we have taken away the water and the air, and a thing with no water and no air does not much care how warm it is. That is the secret. You stop trying to keep the meat cold, and you start taking away what the rot needs to live. Once you see it that way, the fridge starts looking like the flimsiest tool in the kitchen. Let me show you the strong ones. The oldest and the greatest of them all is salt. Salt has kept armies fed and ships crossing oceans and families alive through famine for as long as there have been people. It does one thing supremely well. It pulls the water out of meat. You lay a cut of pork or beef in salt, you pack it in heavy, you rub it deep into every fold and around every bone, and the salt reaches into the meat and draws the moisture out of it, the same way it would draw the water out of a slug. And the bacteria, which were waiting in that water to do their work, find themselves in a desert. They cannot live in it. The meat goes hard and dry and dense, and it keeps. The way we do a salt cure, you take your fresh meat and you bury it in salt. Truly bury it, every surface coated thick, no bare spot left for the rot to take hold. Some cuts you pack in a crock, layer of salt, layer of meat, layer of salt. And then you wait, and the time depends on the size. A small cut some days, a great ham some weeks. A rule of thumb being about a week for every 2 inches of thickness. You keep it cool, while it cures if you can, in the cellar, because the cure works best slow and steady. And when it is done, the meat is so changed that the bacteria have nowhere left to live. And here is the gift of it that nobody expects. Salt curing does not just preserve the meat, it makes it taste better. It deepens it, concentrates it, turns plain pork into something with a flavor frozen meat could never have. Country ham, salt pork, corned beef, the great salted hams of the old world. All of it is salt, doing 2 jobs at once, keeping the meat and making it finer. I have eaten store ham, the wet pink kind that comes sliced in a packet, and I have eaten a ham my own hands cured and hung for a year, and they are not the same animal, not really. One is a thing that was kept from spoiling. The other is a thing that was made into something greater than it started as. That is the difference between fighting rot and practicing a craft. And salt is where the craft begins. After the salt comes the smoke, and the two are partners. Once a ham or a slab of bacon or a string of sausages has taken its salt, we hang it in the smokehouse, and we build a low, cool, smoldering fire beneath it, and we let the smoke wash over it for hours, sometimes for days. The smoke does 3 things at once, which is why it is such a fine partner to the salt. First, the gentle warmth and the moving air dry the surface of the meat further, taking away still more of the water. Second, the smoke itself carries compounds that settle on the meat and fight the bacteria directly, and that lay down a kind of protective skin on the outside. And third, and this is no small thing, it tastes like heaven, the wood matters. We favor hickory for a deep, strong smoke, and applewood or other fruit woods for something sweeter and gentler. You never want a hot, fast fire that cooks the meat before it is preserved. You want it low and slow and smoldering, more smoke than flame, for a long, patient while. My neighbors who are not Amish have more than once seen the smoke rising from my smokehouse of an evening and come over thinking we had a fire to put out, or a party going. It is neither. It is just supper being made to last a year, and there is a thing worth knowing here that trips up many a beginner. There is a difference between smoking to cook and smoking to keep. When you cook a piece of meat in smoke, you run the fire warm, and you eat what comes out within a few days, the way the English do with their backyard smokers. That is good eating, but it is not preserving. To truly preserve, you smoke it cool, the smoke barely warm to the hand. Sometimes the fire set off in a pit, a little ways away, so only the cooled smoke reaches the meat. Cool smoke over a long time dries and protects without ever cooking, and a ham treated so, after its salt, can hang for many months. That is the smoke my grandfather meant when he spoke of putting meat by. Hot smoke for the table this week, cool smoke for the table next winter. Knowing which you are after is half the craft of it. Now, sugar. It may surprise you to hear that sweetness has a place in keeping meat, but it does, and it is why a good ham and a good bacon taste the way they do. We mix sugar in with the salt for the cure, and the sugar helps draw the moisture out alongside the salt, while it softens the harsh edge of the salt and lays down that sweet, savory flavor that makes a breakfast worth getting up for. It is a matter of balance, and it is where the skill comes in. Too much sugar and the meat turns cloying and the cure is weakened. Too little and you lose that rounded richness. My grandmother had the measure of it in her hands, no scale needed, and it took her a lifetime to learn it and a while yet to teach it to my wife. Sugar cure turns mere preserved meat into something your family asks for by name. Then there is vinegar, which fights the rot a different way entirely. Where salt and smoke and sugar all work by taking away the water, vinegar works by making the meat sour. Bacteria, most of the bad ones, cannot live in an acid place. So we make a brine of vinegar, and into it go spices, garlic, dill, peppercorns, sometimes a little sugar to round it, and we submerge our sausages, our fish, certain cuts, down in that sour bath. The acid holds the rot at bay, and the meat takes on a bright, tangy, lively flavor that cuts the richness of a heavy winter table. Pickled sausage, soused fish, the sharp and the sour, all of it is vinegar. Vinegar makes a hostile little world that the bacteria simply cannot settle in. The next one is one of my favorites, and it is the lard. When we butcher a hog, we render its fat, which means we heat it slow until it melts down into clean, liquid lard. And here is the trick. You take meat you have already cooked, you pack it down into a crock, and you pour that hot liquid lard over it until it is wholly covered, drowned in fat. And as the lard cools, it hardens into a solid white seal all around and over the meat, sealing it away from the air entirely. You remember the 4 things the rot needs. One of them is air. The lard takes the air away. The meat sits there in the cool of the cellar, sealed in fat, with no air to feed the bacteria, and it keeps for months. The old folks called potting, and it is nothing more than using the animal's own fat as the packaging, wasting not one part of the creature. When you want a meal, you dig the meat out of the fat, and the fat itself is good for your cooking. Nothing thrown away, nothing bought. The hog provides its own preservation. Now, we do use the cold when nature offers it for free, and that is the root cellar and the winter. A root cellar is a refrigerator that runs on the earth instead of the electric line. You dig down into the ground or into a hillside where the soil holds a steady cool the year round, and you build a room there, and it stays cool and dark and a little damp, somewhere between the freezing point and a few degrees above, which is just the range a fridge tries so hard to make with all its humming and its power bill. In that cellar, we keep our cured hams, our crocks of potted meat, alongside the potatoes and the carrots and the apples, all of it, kept fresh by nothing more than the cool breath of the ground. The earth gives that to us for free. It asks no monthly payment. And in the deep of winter, the whole outdoors becomes our freezer. This is no accident of timing. The reason butchering is done when the snow flies is that the cold is part of the plan. Fresh meat hung in a cold shed or a spring house through the freezing month stays sound for weeks on end. The bitter air doing the work a freezer would do, only without the machine and without the bill. We protect it from the snow and the rain and the animals, wrap it in breathable cloth like burlap so it does not sweat, and the winter keeps it. We do not fight the season, we use it. We let the cold do the part of the work the cold is good for, and we save the salt and the smoke for the rest of the year. Then there is drying, which is salt's plainer cousin, and it is the oldest trick of all. Take the water out of meat, all the way out, and the rot simply cannot begin. So we cut meat into thin strips, season it, and hang it in a warm, dry, airy place where the moving air carries the moisture away, day by day, until what is left is dark and tough and dry as a strap of leather. Jerky, the English call it. It will keep for months in a sack in the cellar. You can gnaw it as it is on a long day in the field, or you can drop it in a pot of water, and it will soften back and give its richness to a soup or a stew. A strip of dried meat is a meal you can carry in your pocket through a whole day's work. And it weighs almost nothing, and it never needs the cold. The strongest method of all for the long haul is canning, pressure canning. We seal our meat down in glass jars, and then we process those jars under high pressure, which drives the heat far hotter than boiling water alone could ever reach. It drives the heat hot enough to kill every living thing inside, and then the jar seals itself airtight as it cools. And now you have meat with no air, no living bacteria, sealed in glass, and it will sit on a shelf in the cool of the cellar and stay good for years. Years. A jar of canned beef or chicken or sausage put up at butchering time is a hot meal waiting for you a winter or two down the road, ready in the time it takes to warm it. For a big family, for a hard winter, for the year you have no idea is coming, there is no better store than a cellar wall lined with jars. And the last of them, the crown of all this knowledge, is pemmican. Pemmican is what you get when you take two of these methods and marry them. You take meat that has been dried hard, the way I just described, and you pound it down nearly to a powder. And then you take rendered fat, the lard, melted, and you mix the two together, sometimes with a handful of dried berries worked in. It cools into a dense, rich cake of pure nourishment, and it is about the most lasting and the most powerful food a person can make. The native peoples of this land made it to carry them across great distances and through hard winters, and it kept for a very long time and gave more strength per bite than almost anything else a body could eat. Dried meat for the protein, fat for the lasting energy, a little fruit for sweetness and health. It is the whole of survival eating folded into one small cake. And it asks for no cold and no jar and no electric, only the knowing of how. Now, I am going to stop and be honest with you, the way my father taught me a man ought to be, because some of what I have just described can hurt you if you do it carelessly, and I would not be doing right by you to leave that out. These old ways work, but they work because the old folks respected them and did them exactly so. They are not loose. The salt cure needs enough salt, truly enough, packed truly thick, or the rot takes hold in the bare spot you missed. The pressure canning of meat is the one I will speak plainest about. Meat is what they call a low-acid food. And there is a thing called botulism, a poison made by a bacteria that grows in sealed jars with no air, that you cannot see or smell or taste, and that can kill. You cannot can meat safely in a plain pot of boiling water, no matter what anyone tells you, because boiling water does not get hot enough to kill it. Meat must go in a proper pressure canner, and you must follow the tested times and pressures exactly, not by guess. The old-timers who got these things wrong got sick, and some did not recover, and that is the plain truth of why the rules matter. So if you take up any of this, learn it properly from good sources. The old ways were never careless ways. There is a reason every step is the way it is, and that reason is usually somebody who learned the hard way a long time ago so that you would not have to. Do it right, though, and here is what you have. You have a cellar that does not care if the power is on. You have meat that lasts not days, but a year, 2 years, sealed in glass and fat and salt. You have a family that does not panic when the storm knocks out the line, because the storm cannot touch a salted ham or a jar on a shelf or a cake of pemmican in a sack. You have the thing the modern world traded away for the convenience of a humming box. You have the simple freedom of not depending on that humming box at all. The folks in my community have kept their families fed clean on salt and smoke for longer than there have been wires strung across this country. Not because we are clever, because we had no power line to lose and no store to run to, so we held on to the knowledge that the rest of the world set down the day the refrigerator arrived and never picked back up. We learned that the rot needs water and air and warmth and time. A person who knows how to take those away need never fear for his supper. A barrel of salt, a smokehouse, a wall of jars, a hole dug into the cool earth. That is a year of meals, kept safe with no machine and no bill, and it is knowledge any one of you could carry home and use. So tell me down in the comments which of these your own people once did, because nearly every family has one somewhere back up the line. A grandmother who canned, a grandfather who smoked his own bacon, an old crock in a cellar nobody remembers the use of. Tell me what you remember and where you are from, because the methods change with the country. I read everyone, and if you put up your first jar or hang your first strip of jerky after this, come back and tell me. I want to hear that the knowledge took hold again. Next time, I am going to show you how my grandmother kept butter and milk and eggs fresh through the heat of summer with no ice at all. Using nothing but a spring of cold water and a clever box, my grandfather sank into the ground beside it. It fed them every summer of their lives, and it would feed you too. Until then, stay watchful, keep your salt close and your cellar cool, and remember, the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.